that was silly, ridiculous, a waste of time. They didn't want. That's why they were so successful. That's why they got away.
I'm surprised they didn't go bigger, but they're probably
I made a living in very dangerous.
there's so many integrated.
Welcome to Dianne Andrews in Black and White. As you see, we're not in our normal studios. We're still here in Washington, D.C. Today happens to be National Whistleblowers Day. Thank you for joining in with us today. I filmed here last year. I've been coming for years. I'm a friend of Marcel Reed and Michael McCrae, who started this 8 years ago, and it's going into a really big event. There's so many whistleblowers, so many stories that need to be told, and that's why I'm shining a light on whistleblowers in my television show that I have, going into 3 million homes. Today I have an old friend with me, Matthew Fogg, who was with us last year. He's a former US Marshal who sued for $4 million and only received $300,000. Now the legal fees were paid separately, and he's going to tell you a little bit. He did receive some other money for back pay, which is, but still out of $4 million, who would think only $300,000 a person would receive for all this long journey that he's been on. He's writing a book that'll be out soon, Bigots with Badges. So Matthew, thanks for being with us here today on Dianne Andrews in Black and White.
Well, it's good to be here, Diane. And first of all, I want to say my congratulations go out to all of the whistleblowers who came here. We're right down in the Dirksen building, so this is the heart of the government of the United States, the Air Dirksen Senate office building. Mm-hmm. And I want to say that, the fact that my case is just one in hundreds of people that have blown the whistle on wrongdoing in the government, and we need people to come forward. And so when I came forward originally back in 1985 is when I started my case. I never thought it would have lasted all of this time, that I would still actually be sort of dealing with the government in this matter. But that's what everybody seems to understand about whenever you blow the whistle against the government. It's like you win the battle, but the war continues on.
Mm-hmm.
So in this,
now, one thing that Stephen Cole, Attorney Cohen, mentioned was that government is not the largest sector of whistleblowing. That is more in the private industry. When I talked to him, because he's the chairman now of the National Whistleblower Center, and I just interviewed Attorney Cohen, who's been dealing with it since 1982 when he got out of law school. He said.
That's right.
So it's the government. People don't. I think not to interrupt you, but I think that that's a sector that people don't realize. It's not just the government.
Exactly.
Tobacco. Look at the bank, the largest settlement ever.
That's right.
$104 million.
That's right.
So I just wanted to bring that into light.
And the bottom line is, when you're talking about blowing the whistle, you're just talking about reporting wrongdoing in any sector, whether it's private, whether it's federal, state, municipal. It's blowing the whistle.
In private industry.
But I think what the irony of it is that people do not expect for it to be in the federal government to be as pervasive it is in the federal government, because they are the ones who are supposed to be the leaders of how we should conduct
maintaining our
fairness and justice in the world.
Yes.
And of course, my case then again was against the U.S. Department of Justice, which is the head integrity law enforcement agency in the country, in the world. So you wouldn't expect that I would deal with the same thing, blowing the whistle of wrongdoing, and then I would have to deal with all the repercussions.
Racism?
Mine was about racism, reporting the discrimination, but at the same time, it was also about reporting, to me, the moral aspect of what we should be doing as law enforcement people. So, like I tell people all the time, when I came out of the academy, they taught us all the right ways to do things.
How many black guys back then were in there? When did you come out of the academy? And how many black guys were in that? Do you remember?
Well,
graduation.
When I came out of the academy in 1978.
And I wonder, you were one of the few, right? Probably.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it wasn't a lot, and I had a 4-year degree in criminal justice administration, which was unusual as well.
Right.
But we were in.
But you have to have a degree to be a U.S. Marshal.
No, you don't.
You don't.
No. The Marshal Service is one of law enforcement, federal law enforcement agencies that they don't require a degree. They look towards that direction if you don't have any law enforcement experience.
Right. Even today.
Even today, it's not a requirement. So, but for me coming on back then, they were beginning to recruit a lot of African Americans in the 70s, trying to get us up. But again, once you got on, you still had to keep in your place. And
What do you mean keeping your place?
well, I mean, that's where we had the barriers. You were supposed to be happy you got a job. You weren't in the supervisor. We had nobody at the top levels of the Justice Department in the Marshal Service. We had no leadership, no blacks in the top level leadership positions when I came on board.
Right.
So one of the things, we had a black union, and we had African Americans who were complaining. And my complaint didn't so much come for that reason. My complaint became because there was a particular manager who was known to racially go after African Americans. He was a white manager, and everybody was trying to avoid him. And he targeted me, especially astute African Americans, people who had the potential to rise up, to go to the top through the rank and file. And so he came after me. I, in turn, filed a discrimination complaint against him. That was in 1985. Now, once you file that complaint, even though you might be filing against some individual that's doing some wrongdoing, in the case of the government, then the whole government's machine steps in and protects
Retaliation
that
against
Well,
you.
they protect that individual. So then that's when you start to feel the retaliation. You start to feel all of a sudden you get placed in positions, assignments that, undesirable assignments. Everything starts to occur. So in my case,
A slowdown in your career, to say the least.
right, and in my case, once I filed that complaint, he pulled me. He got it set up. I mean, well, actually, the complaint led to me being pulled off an assignment, being unjustly charged. So bottom line is that's where we went. But make a long story short, coming all the way up to today, the case lasted 13 years before I got in the federal case.
You never thought in your wildest dreams that this would happen?
No, absolutely.
I'm going to ask you this
1998.
quick question. Most people, because I've had Michelle Reed and Michael McCrae, the Acorn 8, on my show, as I said, in the studio in Baton Rouge, and listening to people, and interviewed 10 people last year here, talked to hundreds here, and everyone seems to say, you think you're telling something good to your boss. A lot of them do. Maybe not in your case, but I know Mike said that. He had discovered, money's being misappropriated wrongly or whatever, and you tell your boss, you think, oh wow, I'm gonna get a star for this, right? And they already know. And then the next thing is you're the bad guy because you know where the bones are buried.
Right.
Is that
and that's a part of whistleblowing.
Yeah.
But in my case, in law enforcement, I mean, if you tell about somebody doing racially injustice things, and everybody knows it, and then you get a case we had an investigation that proved it. So then I go all the way to trial, and then the jury says that's what happened here.
Right.
And by the time I got to a jury trial, we was involving a federal judge. We involved a lot of high-profile people. Then I get the verdict, and then it takes another 10 years of appeals before I even get the money in 2008. I get the money in 2008.
Do you think it'd be quicker now? Do you think it was because of the times back then, the 70s and 80s?
No.
Thinking no quicker now, same kind of
process. No, because the trial occurred in the 90s, 98 to 2000.
Yeah.
Then 2008, it took 10 years because you can always appeal. The government can appeal as often as they want. So in my case, because I had such a major verdict, to me, I just believe the DOJ didn't want to send a message out to other people you can win.
We're going to have to start wrapping up. Is there anything you'd like to leave to people who may want to go in to become a federal US Marshal and go into the government? You're not saying don't do that. Are you?
Well, what I'm saying to you is that I'm saying to you that when you take on that badge and that gun, you swear to uphold this country against enemies, foreign or domestic. And so the bottom line is you have to understand that. And so if you see people working next to you who are considered those few bad apples, they always say, those bad guys, but somebody in that position can affect somebody's life terribly. You can do all kinds of things to people, just destroy their life just with what you say on paper, what they did to you. So to me, what I would say is we need people with integrity to come into this field. We don't want them to be afraid of what happens to whistleblowers. Right now, we understand whistleblowers is not considered a
mainstream thing to do.
Something good to do. But the point is, we need that.
Stephen Corn did say, and I'm going to wrap it up, that $800 million was awarded to whistleblowers last year. I think he said, or in the last year, because 100. I guess whenever the 104 was gotten by Brad over at USB or whatever that bank. Yeah. So we're going to wrap it up. But I'm glad to see that we still want good people to come and be U.S. Marshals, to be in the government, and those are the kind of people you need. lead like what you did and what people are doing, because they're not good people. They go along with what exactly is being done wrong in the government and in private industry. So thank you very much. Thank you very much from Dianne Andrews.
Excuse me, are you Dianne Andrews?
Yes, I am.
I'm Darius. I'm here to attend your leadership speech.
Oh, thank you for coming. That's wonderful. What's your major? You're in college, right?
Yes, ma'am.
What are you majoring in?
Construction management.
I tell you, then, this leadership management speech that I'm going to do will do you a lot of good.
Well, I always watch your show.
Oh, good. I'm on television and YouTube. I appreciate you watching. Are you headed to the event right now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Come on, let's walk together and I can teach you and tell you some things about leadership and management.
Perfect.
Come on, let's go. Thanks for joining us at Dianne Andrews in Black and White. We're here in Washington, D.C. at the 8th Annual Whistleblowers Conference, and today is National Whistleblowers Day. I have interviewed about 7, 8 people. We're doing about 3 shows up here, and the stories just get more and more profound in every industry. We just talked to attorney Stephen Cole, and most people think of this as just a Stephen Corn, think of this as a government problem. I mean, there are many more in private industry, as he talked about, as a veteran of whistleblowers for the last 35, 40 years. Next, I have with me Netra Helperin, who is the executive director and executive producer and director of Peace Films. Tell us exactly, Netra, what Peace is. Peace Films is. What do you do?
Peace Films, the tagline is world peace through informed citizens. So our country, the United States, Americans do not actually know what our country is doing overseas because the media, together with the politicians, are painting a very different story than what is actually happening.
Now, you are a Jewish individual. Were you
Yes.
born here or in Israel?
No, I was born here in the United States, and my dad is Jewish, hence the name Helperin.
Are you still of the Jewish faith? Do you still practice Judaism?
I'm not so religious,
Yeah,
but being
more
Jewish
spiritual.
isn't necessarily a
Right.
religious thing. It's a, I don't know, an ethnicity or whatever it is.
Culture kind of thing, too. do
Culture.
you
There's
think?
some
Yeah.
cultural things that
Yeah.
are still inside of me, yes.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about, which is interesting, and that's the reason I bring up that you're a Jewish individual. We're going to talk about some things that the Israeli community is doing to Palestinian kids. So let's tell us what you found out in your investigation and what you're trying to do to help the Palestinian children.
So yes, I just returned from Palestine, and the Israeli government, and actually when you said community, there is some truth to that also, the settlers. So basically, Israel is arresting and detaining children, some as young as 6 years old. 6 years old. What was his crime? Playing in the wrong place, and that he was thinking about throwing stones. That's what they said.
Thinking about it, as they have ESP. They
They
can
have
read the
ESP.
minds of what the children are doing.
They're pretty, yeah, their IT is so good they
Yeah.
can actually read the minds. So another child was arrested for a Facebook post in which he said that he missed his father, who had been arrested by the IDF.
And was over in Israel, in
Also,
jail, in prison.
In prison, yes. Another child, I think, had thrown a stone, but he was in prison for 6 months, and because he had a certain illness and was not allowed his medication, he lost his sight. He's now blind.
And he's still in prison in
No,
Israel.
no, he's out.
They sent him home after he's blinded.
Yes. So I went to a small village in Israel, in Palestine, called Nabi Saleh. There's a whole village that's actually one family, and they're all activists. They basically are nonviolent, and they protest
It's
constantly.
one family, you mean real
Like
related?
500, literally, because the family just grows and grows and
Yeah,
grows.
yeah.
So
Everybody's a cousin or an uncle or a sister or married into the family.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes, so Israel's policy, and they stated this, clearly stated in writing on television, is to have the most land and the least Palestinians. So basically, even though there were numerous partitions, so to speak, Israel's completely disrespecting that. And what they're doing is they're building settlements in areas that are supposed to be for Palestinians. And what they do is they bulldoze the homes, they make up reasons to bulldoze the Palestinians' home. This throws the whole family into trauma, and then they build a huge settlement, and then they allow Jews from around the world to come there, usually at very, very low rents. So basically, and sometimes they even pay nothing, like in Hebron, which is, that city is one of the worst. They pay zero rent, and so the settlers, in their minds, their jobs is to harass the Palestinians.
Now, do you believe this is a one-sided? Children, of course, is a whole separate issue, and no one should be doing that. But do you believe there are things that Palestine also does that are infringing upon the Jewish community there in Israel also that shouldn't be done?
Palestine has no guns. The soldiers. There are Palestinian police that stand around on the roadway, but the citizens have no guns. So
what about the Palestinian government? Do you think?
Hamas.
Yes.
In the so Hamas is in Gaza, and the PLA is in the West Bank.
Palestine Liberation Army. Yeah.
Are they a model uncorrupt government? No.
Right.
However, they are also under occupation. So yes, sometimes there are rockets. Yes, there are some people that are terrorists. However,
we're just going to talk about today then is the children. Then.
Yeah, if you put people in a cage, they will react. And that is according to international law. It is okay to defend yourself. But anyway, with children, they are arresting children. Now, in the U.S. Congress, there is a Congresswoman, Betty McCollum, I think from Minnesota, and she put forward a bill, 2407, which is...
Are you a part of that? Did you bring this forward to her? Or she was already working on it?
No. Yeah. She was already working on it. And the Friends Service Committee gave it to her. Defense of Children International, which I did meet in Palestine in an interview, they brought that to her.
How many children are we talking about? Are we talking about 1,000, 100?
Yeah, it's about 700 a year.
And they do let them out after, one boy was damaged, poor guy.
Eventually, they're all damaged psychologically.
Yes.
Because the 6-year-old that I interviewed, he had not been abused by the soldiers, but the 13-year-olds, yes, they were beaten up by soldiers. These are 13-year-old kids, and big burly soldiers beat them up and psychologically tortured them and tried to get them to sign confessions in Hebrew. These kids speak Arabic.
They don't know Hebrew.
They don't know Hebrew. They speak Arabic. They don't allow any parents, any attorneys, and so they just indict them and prosecute them. And
we're going to have to start wrapping it up, Netra. But tell me, what is your next step in trying to help the children? Are you going to work with the the female out of that you just spoke of?
Ms. McCollum?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm also going to be interviewing maybe her, but also co-sponsors. I'm contacted all the offices of
co-sponsors of the bill. Okay.
To get them to say on record the reason I support this. And I did meet with her staff, and one thing they said to me is, Congresswoman McCollum is against children being in cages on the U.S.-Mexico border. She's also against children being in cages in Palestine. She's just basically against children being in cages.
I think most of the world is against children being treated poorly.
That's pretty much a human moral issue.
Right. But I will have to say this since you brought that up. The former DHS Secretary, Jeb Johnson, who is a black man under Obama, said they're doing the Trump cages, and that is no more different than what they did. They're the same. They don't call them cages, cells, I guess is what they call them. But hey, right or wrong under any president, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter who's doing it.
All right, we're going to wrap it up, and hopefully we can help, enlighten the world on what's going on with the children anywhere in the world. Thank you so much, Ned.
Thank you for
interviewing.
Pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you also.
Okay.
Welcome back to Dianne Andrews in Black and White. Thanks for joining us again here at the 8th Whistleblower Summit in Washington, D.C. This is my 4th time here and my 2nd summit doing shows. This time we'll do 3 shows. Last year we did 3 shows also. Now the gentleman sitting next to me is named Robert Maclean. He was a twice fired TSA Air Marshal. And when I met him about 2 or 3 years ago, he wasn't twice fired. Correct.
Correct.
And now he is twice fired. So we're going to learn a little bit about that. We're going to learn what an air marshal does. What do we think when he was still with TSA? How many air marshals do we have out there on planes? And why he was on Tucker Carlson? I think last month, was that when you were on Tucker Carlson?
About 2 weeks ago.
About 2 weeks ago, and talking about some other issues that we'll briefly talk about today. But thank you for being here with me, Robert. Thanks very much. We've been trying to do this for the last couple of years. Sit down and talk with you on your journey. What year did you whistleblow on the TSA?
July 2003.
2003. You have not received a penny from your whistleblowing. No settlement. Back pay is all you've received, but nothing else. Correct?
Correct, and 58% of that was taken by the IRS and the California Tax Board.
You were in what city in California?
I was stationed in the Los Angeles field office the first time I was fired.
Now tell us why you were fired the first time.
I exposed a hijacking plot in which the hijackers were going to exploit the opportunity when the pilots unlocked the cockpit doors to use the lavatory or to get their food trays.
So they were sitting up front. They were going to be sitting up front and then rush into the cockpit pit to take over the plane. Is that what you exposed?
They were going to bowl over the flight
pilot,
attendant that stands there and move over the 3.5-foot drink cart that's used to protect the cockpit.
How did you discover this? That was going to happen? How did you discover it?
We were given an intelligence briefing, which was withheld from my judiciary discovery and from FOIA for 6 years.
Now tell me why people wouldn't want to know that was going to happen. Why were you considered a bad person for telling them about the plot, it seems?
No, Congress was extremely happy about what I did. Namely, Senator Chuck Schumer. He was one of the loudest protesting the plan to remove air marshals from pretty much every flight that was 3 hours or longer, which is, of course, the pilot is going to come out of a flight
and use the bathroom.
That's right. If it's a long flight.
Right.
And that's our most, on page 158 of the 9/11 Commission report, it spells it out. I know nobody reads it, but it's on page 158. The hijackers simply waited for the pilots to use the lavatory or get food trays.
It's pretty smart. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of smarts, but it is smart for them to think about doing that. Yeah.
The 9/11 terrorist plan was absolutely perfect. The only burp in the entire operation was the one flight that got stuck on the tarmac for almost an hour. Because the passengers, that was flight United 93, it got delayed, and so the passengers...
That's the one that went down in Pennsylvania.
So now the passengers knew they were all going to die, and therefore they rushed the cockpit.
And they had time to help save millions, hundreds of thousands of lives
Absolutely.
potentially.
Every passenger on United 93 is a bona fide national hero because we probably saved our government because it was headed for the Capitol.
Right, and people need to know that and never forget United 93.
Absolutely.
I think they have a ceremony once a year there at
there's
that spot.
a national monument in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it's in Pennsylvania.
Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. What was the guy's? I remember what did he say? His mother still says it. Something about let's go get them or let's
roll.
Let's roll. There, yeah. The guy said let's roll. Yeah, that's real heroes. They knew they were going to die, and you can't take that away from them. So how did they fire you? What was the process last time after you did this? How did they fire you?
Well, they knew I was a bona fide whistleblower, so my boss was too uncomfortable with firing me because he was under multiple sexual quid pro quo investigations for having sex with air marshals in his office.
Women or men?
I do not
These
know.
days you have to ask,
At
right?
least
Women
I
or men?
know one of them was a woman. And it was a woman who was desperate to avoid her second termination as an air marshal.
So she did some liberties with him, or let him have liberties with her to keep her job.
Well, she avoided a second termination for having sex with the same person.
Is this
who fired me.
proven? And he has sex allegations against him. The guy.
Yes, there's numerous media articles about this. But I got fired the second time for posting these 10-year-old media articles
about him and his sexual proclivities.
Yes.
Why would you post that?
because I believe it's wrong for managers to be exchanging sexual favors with subordinates.
Did anything
Absolutely.
happen to him as a result of going public?
He's now the Assistant Federal Security Director for Newport Beach Airport, which is John Wayne Orange
Yeah.
County Airport. So he never had a dock and pay. They no longer allow him to supervise anybody because they're afraid of him having sex with them.
But they didn't fire him.
Of course not, no. He continues to make approximately $192,000 a year.
Which you have no salary as of now. Now, the
No.
second firing was about what?
Now I have 3 pending danger to public safety disclosures that were referred by the United States Office of Special Counsel to the Secretary of Homeland Security. So as a result,
Was that under Jeb Johnson when he was still with Obama, or the current now?
this was one was under both Bush and Obama, and the other 3 were under the Trump administration.
And so what's the status of that?
They're still pending investigation.
Even the ones from Bush and Obama?
Yeah, the Department of Homeland Security prioritized firing me first, then correcting the security lapses that I exposed in the last 4 years.
Now, as we were saying, if they put, what did you say, 20% of planes had air marshals on them, which is one thing, you wanted more air marshals on long-distance flights, so you thought it was
It would probably cost about $50 billion a year.
And the budget is how much?
Much less than that.
Less than that. So
Correct.
less than what it would cost just to put the air marshals on long-distance planes.
On every
On
single
everyone.
one?
Everyone.
Yes.
Not,
It would be in billions.
it would be in billions.
Yes.
And the budget is a lot less than just
Oh,
putting
the
them
Air
on there.
Marshal budget, I'm sorry, is $800
I
million
thought you
a
said
year.
800 million.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, 800 million, not billion, or 800 billion.
800 million
800
is the
million.
annual budget now.
So you definitely couldn't do it when we got billions to get them on the planes.
You said that,
Okay.
not me.
It may cost billions to get them on the plane, just for me adding up the numbers, because I'm not an expert in this, so I can't say what it would cost. But so, would you do this again?
Absolutely. I'm a law enforcement officer. That's our duty, is we don't think about we're going to die or take a bullet to the head, saving a baby or saving your
Like when
your
9/11
family.
guys go into the towers and to
That's-
to save people.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
While firemen were running up the towers, people were running out.
right. And now they can't hardly. I'm glad they passed the 9/11 bill to help those guys who are dying with cancer and everything. It shouldn't have taken this long to pass that. So what would you like to say to people? And tell me your feelings, because we're going to wrap this up. You've got to be bitter, a little bitter maybe? No?
I think about all the military servicemen that have lost their limbs, have traumatic brain injury, or have come back in boxes.
Yes.
So I'm very lucky to be still healthy.
Are you a
and
veteran?
alive. Yes, ma'am.
It sounded like you were,
I'm a veteran
yeah.
of the United States Air Force.
Well, I want to thank you for your service to the country, and hopefully this pans out well for you and it speeds up sometime, Robert. Thank you for being on Dianne Andrews in
welcome.
Black and White. Thank you. Good to talk to you.